After carrying around Sigma's 40mm 1.4 Art Series lens at numerous weddings, I can tell you that using the RF 35mm 1.4 lens felt entirely different. Hey everybody, it's Tim Gowling. I'm a wedding and lifestyle photographer based out of Eastern Ontario. The Sigma 40mm 1.4 Art Series lens really produced some fantastic images. But it got to a point where this lens was heavy, large, and exhausting to bring with me to weddings. It would end up in my rolling case and I'd only bring it out for a few moments of the day. And it got to a point where I actually disliked bringing it, as much as I loved the pictures from it. Those pictures are in my portfolio and I love those pictures. Like, editing those pictures from that lens was fantastic. But at the same point, it was like a 50 torn split of like, I hated bringing it along to work with me. So when Canon announced the RF 35mm 1.4 VCM lens, I kept my eyes on it, and it got to the point where I couldn't do one more wedding with that 40mm 1.4. It was a lot of weight to bring. So I just went, you know what? Done with that lens, bringing it to work. And I went in and I got the 35mm, and here's what I found out. So here it is, the Canon RF 35mm 1.4 VCM lens. And look how small it is. It's just like the RF 85mm 1.4 VCM lens I reviewed just a few months ago. Canon's RF 35mm 1.4 VCM lens sports a 67mm filter thread. Look at that. The element's not quite as large as the 85, but it has a 63-degree angle of view, producing a 35mm image. It's equipped with Canon's voice coil motor and a nano USM motor. It has the clicky control ring as well as the smooth manual focus ring, and I love how they've done such a good job with their manual focus rings. It also has the AF to MF switch, and as standard with these VCM lenses, you have variable aperture control on newer Canon RF bodies, which you can activate with the iris unlock switch, and then you can control the aperture ring just like that. I predominantly shoot stills, so I always just keep that clicked into auto, and I control my aperture on the back of the camera body. It has two aspherical elements and two UD lenses and an ASC, which is an air sphere coating to reduce ghosting, along with a super spectra coating and some fluorine coating across 14 elements in 11 groups. It has a minimum focus distance of 11 inches with a 0.18 times magnification. When it's mounted on the Canon R3, it has 7 stops of stabilization, because image stabilization is not equipped natively in this lens. This lens has 11 aperture blades, and it goes from 1.4 to f16. This lens also comes with a lens hood and a lens bag too. What I love about these lens hoods is that they have a little lock switch on a spring detent. So unlike ones that just can rely on friction, when the friction rings wear out on those hoods, you fall off and lose the hoods along, and that's pretty typical on a lot of Sigma lenses that I've used in the past. So I like this, that it has a nice little detent switch. This lens also comes with a filter gel holder that you install on the rear element of the lens. So you remove the cap and you can install it just in here with a gel filter. This lens also has one custom function button. And the part that I want to highlight most about this lens is that it only weighs 555 grams. That is less, just less than half the weight that I used to carry around with the Sigma 40mm lens. And that lens came in at 1200 grams. Can you see why it was back-breaking on a work day? Because at that time I'd have the Sigma 85mm in my bag, I'd have the 40mm 1.4 in my bag also, and I'd be rocking a 24-70. I'd have a second camera. So quite typically in my camera bag, when I was walking around, I'd have an 85 on one camera, and I'd have the 24-70 on another camera, and then I'd have a 40 in my bag along with 2 speed lights. That's a lot of weight to be carrying around. So switching into the RF lineup has really reduced and saved my back in weight. So by adding this lens to my bag, I have saved myself 600 grams. Right? So I'm rocking a 24-70, which is still the Sigma one. I have the RF 85 1.4 VCM lens, 2 full frame bodies, and then I'll have this as well in my bag, which is 600 grams, 555 grams. That's 600 grams lighter, plus the 2 speed lights if I need them later on or they're not in my rolling case. But as you can see, just by reducing that weight by 600 grams has saved my back a lot. So that's the biggest thing that I wanted to highlight about this lens is the weight, because I love the weight. This is probably my favorite part. I'm looking for ways to save weight without compromising my equipment. All right, so let's hop into Lightroom and have a look at some of the images that I took with this lens. This was the first wedding that I brought this lens to, and I want to share them with you. Overall, I'm fairly happy with the sharpness of this lens. Now, I am comparing it to the 40mm 1.4, but at 200%, you can see where the focus is. It's in around this general area. And I am pleasantly happy with the sharpness. Now, some lenses can be too sharp and you have to apply some de-sharpening to an image. But I'm focused around. She is luckily in the same plane of focus too. One thing that a lot of people mentioned was the vignetting in corners of images. That can be said as true for portraiture and this kind of wedding. This picture specifically, it's natural light. I'm not using a flash, and I have been pleasantly surprised about the results from this lens. Like going back to this picture, the flash did not fire, and looking in the corners, the noise is not bad at all. Now, I am at a lower ISO, so you have to account for that. But let's hop into the lens corrections here. We'll disable the lens corrections. And then re-enable them. Again. Overall, I'm pretty happy with those results. There's not much too bad results in the corners, so let's move on to another one. In this image, I'm testing out the lens's minimum focus distance, and I am pleasantly surprised, pleasantly impressed with the image quality close up. Now, it's not as sharp as what you'd want for a macro lens close up, but I did deliver this image and my clients did love it. Because you're not going, you're not zooming in super far into an image, and this is at 200%, so let's zoom out to 100, and that is a perfectly acceptable image. It was shot at f2, so your depth of field is going to be a lot smaller compared to if I was shooting at, say, 7.1, where the closer you get, the more depth of field you require. You can see some chromatic aberration beginning here on this shiny piece of high contrast piece of metal. Now, this was shot at 1/200th of a second. I did use flash because I was in a dark part of the room. For a nice quick and grab and go image, I'm perfectly happy with this, and I have another one over here. Here's another close-up image. Now, I did obviously take other pictures with my macro lens, but I wanted to test out this lens also. You know, it's not a macro lens, and you can't really compare it to the RF 35mm 1.8 macro. But I just wanted to see, check it out, see what it was like. I'm pleasantly, you know, I like the sharpness from this. It is shot at f2, so I do, you know, you do again have a shallow depth of field, just like the last image. Zooming into 200%, you can see some purple fringing on these high contrast areas, but also they are, you know, those plastic diamond looking material. I'm not sure if these are real stone or not, or just plastic. You can see, you know, purple fringing around here and then green fringing over here as we move further away from the plane of focus. Here we have another image of a makeup artist. I shot this at f2. You see a bit of chromatic aberration, but generally I am fairly happy with the sharpness. This is at 200%. So let's zoom out to 100%. Love that. I love the composition. The chromatic aberration is not particularly detrimental to the image at this point. So this next image we're going to be looking at is a high ISO natural light image. It was shot at 12,800 ISO at 7.1. It was 320th of a second, shot at 7.1, ISO 12,800, because I wanted a bit more in focus. You know, it's a high demand image where I'm kind of trying to capture 3 people. The first bridesmaid, she wasn't in focus, but she's still, you know, it's still an acceptable image. This one here is laughing, having, you know, enjoying the moment, and this one's semi in focus. So if you wanted all of them in focus, yeah, I could have gone for a smaller aperture, but it's a balancing act between how much depth of field I want and how much I can push that image, because this was a very dark moment. Now I could have gone to 20,000, but in that moment I decided and chose and went with ISO 12,800. So let's have a look at those corners once again. I have, here we go, post-crop vignetting. I brought it down to -45. Woo. With the post-crop removed, let's have a look at those corners. At 200%, you can see that there is more noise, just like a little bit. But you know, there's going to be noise in this image anyways, because it is shot at 12,800, and I do have 50% denoise applied. So let's turn off the denoise. Zooming in, let's have a look at that corner noise. So with the lens corrections turned on and my edits turned off for this particular image, you can see that the noise is fairly substantial in the corners, but there is noise everywhere in this image anyways, because I did shoot it at 12,800. And looking at it at 200%, you're going to see noise, but the image was exposed correctly enough that, you know, it's not too detrimental to the image, because I only increased the exposure by 0.16. So zooming in at 100%, even with my corrections disabled, my edits disabled, it looks okay. So let's remove some of the vignetting from here, and that's what the image would have looked like without any of the profile vignetting turned on. So if you remove all the profile corrections, you can see there's a slightly wider field of view, and there is like a bit of dimming in the corners. Maybe like a stop, maybe half a stop. But if we go back to my edited picture, here we go, here's my editing picture. I have AI denoise at 50% turned on, because it was shot at 12,800. You know, I have my profile corrections enabled at 100%, and my post-crop vignette is -45, because I wanted to darken those corners and really draw the eyes into the center of this image. Using this lens how I have used it has been everything that I've wanted it to be. Here is another lovely image of this bride. As you can see, it has this nice hair. This was used with a prism. I wanted, you know, there was a nasty looking TV in the, it wasn't a nasty looking TV, but it was a dark wall with a TV on it. So I brought out a prism to try and distract from the fact that there was a TV right on the other side. You know, space was limited. So sharpness at 1.4, at 100, and 200% magnification. I'd say that's perfectly acceptable. I shot this also on my 24 megapixel Canon R3, and you can still see just like the faintest bit of chromatic aberration. There's a little bit of purple just there, but very sharp image. Is it as sharp as a Sigma 40mm 1.4 art series lens? I don't think so. That's just me personally. I don't think it is quite as sharp as that, but how sharp do you really want a portrait? I also find that, here we go, there's some more green chromatic aberration over there, just around here, the high contrast area of her wedding dress to the dark background. I do find that there are situations where I have had to correct for chromatic aberration, where on the Sigma Art Series lens, I never had to do any manual tweaking of chromatic aberration of that lens. And that lens, because of its large front element and its large design, I found that lens to be optically pretty damn perfect. So there are compromises with this lens. For what you get with this lens, I think it's worth it. Let's have a look at this lens too. So for some more chromatic aberration, the bride was just looking outside, waiting for her groom to arrive. So it's another high contrast area, and in this particular scenario, it handled chromatic aberration fairly well. There's a little bit of green over there, but barely any. I'm being nitpicky now. This is at 200%. And even with, we'll go into the edits here, I've brought down my post-crop vignette to -26. So I've, you know, even though I have profile corrections turned on this lens, I'm still adding a post-crop vignette, and quite a heavy one too, at -26, just to really draw you in, and, you know, so you can see the ambience of the room, not so much the room, but the ambience of the day, and, you know, try and draw you in. And I don't know, I love my post-crop vignettes. So the fact that you have to rely on the post-crop vignette to brighten the corners of an image, I've always darkened a lot of the corners on all my images, and as standard on all my images I have like a -10 to 20 post-crop vignette. So even though the profile corrections are lightening the corners, I'm then redarkening them, or in some cases I am, you know, reducing some of that the post-crop vignette on lens corrections, like the vignetting amount on the lens correction slider. So I'm actually reducing that. So far I haven't really had too much of an issue with the corners having too much noise, because I'm already darkening them. Let's crack on to a part of the day where I'm using this lens and I have, say, just a little bit of post-crop vignette. So I'm shooting this at f1.6, 250 ISO at 1/200th of a second. I am using flash. I have two speed lights, one off to the left with a mag mod up on a stand, and I have another one, blue one, with a grid behind me. So sharpness, lovely. I like that. Very nice. Beautiful image. Nice skin tones are produced. How are the corners? Let's have a look. Not too bad, and I'm at 200%. Let's go into the edit module. So again, highlight priority. Post-crop vignette, I'm reducing it by 17. And that's with the profile corrections turned on as well. So, and let's go 100% too. And if you're at 100%, you're not even going to see that anyways. So I really don't have a problem with the post-crop vignette, and that's why I didn't buy this lens straight away, because I was worried about that for something that I really shouldn't have been worried about. But overall, I'm really happy with these lenses. Let's have a look at this one. Lenses. Overall, I'm really happy with this lens. The sharpness, beautiful. Let's go in at 200%. Nice. I got that blue light on. You know, the bride loved, you know, blue. I gave her a selection of choice. There was a lot of salt on the ground. I think one hero image I did painstakingly remove that salt on the floor. It was a winter wedding back in February. And I did not, if you're wondering, I didn't do that to the artwork. That was the hotel. Corners again, a little bit of speckling, but nothing that really distracts or anyone's going to notice, especially when someone's looking on their phone, or even in print. Like I think I printed this or a different one for my client, because I gave her a couple of included prints in her package, and no one's going to say anything about it. It's I'd say this is perfectly acceptable for using at weddings. We've had a look at some pictures in Lightroom, And I haven't really talked about video. So with video on older RF bodies, you can use the iris control ring in video mode only. And then on the newer like R5 II, R1, and probably the R6 Mark III, you could probably use this you can use this in photo mode too. I'm pretty sure about the R6 Mark III, don't quote me, but I know for definite R5 II and R1 you can use this in photo mode. So I have used this for video. If you've watched any of my YouTube videos from January 2026 to now, excluding this video, this is my wide lens that you are currently seeing me now. So at the moment I'm recording 24-70 set at 35mm. Normally I record at f2. I'm recording at the moment at f2.8. Now, I did use this lens to capture video at my father-in-law's 80th birthday party, and I found the results to be pretty good. And I shot it on the R3, and typically I will shoot video on R5, and I did do some moments with the R5 too. I do find the focus is very fast. However, I'm not sure if it's because I'm using the R3 or the R5. It can be like sometimes I've noticed a little twitchy in videos, like the focus is a little bit too fast, or the camera gets stuck on a subject that I don't want it to be, and then I'm out of focus and it's locked on a different part of the image, and it will take a little minute for it to get back to where it wants to be. I'm not sure if that's necessarily the lens or the autofocus and how I've set it up within the camera, but generally I have it set on face tracking, and then I'll select the face if it's not me recording, and I'll let it do its thing. Apart from the odd time of it getting caught on an item that is not a face, which I believe is more down to the camera, but I don't know, it can be a little twitchy, especially going from far away and then back in, but that's just my own personal experience here in my office or studio. But using it at the father-in-law's birthday party, because like I just wanted to create a highlight reel. I'm not a hybrid shooter, but I think this lens will be pretty cool for hybrid users, especially doing like wedding videos, maybe a wider field of view, but then you get a lot of distortion. I think 35mm is a great focal length for that, unless you're doing selfie recording videos. However, I don't know, I think this lens would be a great pairing with the new R6V. That's a camera that I'm pretty excited about. I wouldn't mind getting my hands on one of those and trying it out. Even though I'm primarily a still shooter, doing stuff like this, if I can, take this off, I think this would be a great pairing with that camera for shooting weddings and stuff, or I add like a hybrid team. But again, I'm not a hybrid shooter. And, I have found this lens acceptable for video. My video experience is limited, but from what I can say, I've had fun with it. I've created and captured some moments that other people have sat down and enjoyed that video, along with pictures, because quite often if I go to an event like that for like my in-laws, so I'm doing something personal and I want to create like a little video like I did, I used this lens for video and photo. So I think I was using this lens on the R3 and I was capturing some photos and some highlight clips with it. And then on the R5, I believe I was shooting the 85mm, and I brought like one speed light with me. And, I took some pictures and videos, made a separate highlight video that was like a couple of minutes long, and then like a bunch of pictures to go along with it, and sent it out to their family. Paired with the, this is why I paired this lens with the R3 over the R5 for handheld shooting, is because the image stabilization in the R3 is better than the image stabilization or the in-body stabilization within the R5. I'm not sure how many stops of stabilization you get on the R5 body. However, Canon have on their website is that this lens will have when on the R3, the R3 will have 7 stops of stabilization when using in-body stabilization. Because using the R3, if you stick it on, say, the RF 2070-200Z lens, and the I've noticed on the RF 100mm macro, it will say IS+. So where that lens would normally have 5 stops of stabilization, I believe, on a normal camera body will have like 8 stops of stabilization on the R3, so you get an extra boost of stabilization, which I don't typically rely on for my photography work, but with my video, you know, doing some stuff for video, you know, like I do for you guys, and like my own little personal projects, you know, using this lens for content creation, you know, unless you're turning the camera and looking at you, where then you'll need a wider field of view. This lens is, you know, been very handy, and I've used it a lot in recording videos for you guys to enjoy. So those are my thoughts on video for that. Wow, that was a lot of information to go over very quickly in this video. I really hope you guys have enjoyed this video about the Canon RF 35mm 1.4 VCM lens. If you've liked this video, turn on those bell notifications for more. Subscribe, comment, and like. I'll see you guys next time. Ciao.